All right, it says it's live. All right, I'm just gonna see how long the delay is. 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, it says it's live. All right, I'm just gonna 15. It's 15 see how long the delay is. All right, mute the other window. Okay. Okay. The comments seem to work. And you seeing it all right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let me see. Make sure my screen share is working while we wait for more to join us. I'm just leaving a little comment in the comments section just to get that warmed up a little bit. 2 viewers currently.
Me and you.
Yep, that's us. I'm just letting general know. But yeah, so we're recording. So, I mean, do you think we should just start out with some content here as far as people who come back to rewatch?
Yeah, let's just start. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So welcome to the first ever live Change My View podcast. And I am here with the founding moderator of Change My View, Snorlax. Are you there?
Hello. I am here.
All right. Oh, but do that again. Your face will pop up.
Hello. As my face popped up.
So the sound, it goes to wherever the sound's coming from.
Okay, that's good.
If there's a conflict, it'll default to me, I think, because I started it. So, all right. So, yeah, so this is our first attempt to try this live. It'll be unedited, somewhat unfiltered. And so welcome to anyone who's coming from the future to watch, because right now we can see that it's only Snorlax and I, or Kal. And are you going to Kal today?
I am, yes. And I'll just say that the reason we're trying a live stream is in the hopes that we can actually maintain this as a regular thing. In the past, we did attempt some edited podcasts, but we got a bit caught up in the editing, etc. So maybe this will allow, a regular.
In fact, there's still one we've recorded that I haven't finished editing yet. That's from the past. That's not like a month and a half old.
It's okay. I think this is a fresh slate.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to releasing that at some point. It was a good discussion among those moderators, but today we got us two, and so giving this a first shot. Then, what do you want to start with, Kal? We can get into some of the posts, or if you had any meta stuff.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned in the post, we don't have a topic or a particular plan, but we thought we could start by maybe looking at some of the top posts of the week, maybe some new posts that are going on just now. And one that caught our eye earlier on was very relevant, I think, to the subreddit itself, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And I'm going to bring that back up here and then see if we can't get to a screen share. So I am going to activate that. Now, where is that? There it is. Okay, screen sharing to screen 2. And all right, so what you see here is the Reddit feed for Change My View top of this past week. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we thought we'd look at Change My View, arguing with bigots online is not a waste of time, which, as I said, is relevant to the subreddit, and also perhaps against the idea of the subreddit. So it'd be interesting to get into some of these comments. But we'll start by summing up the post itself.
Cool. Okay, so we'll do it here.
Yeah, so basically, this is a post made by a practicing Muslim, although, as they point out themselves, their faith is not really relevant to this discussion, as it's more of a meta conversation on the idea of arguing with people online. And they say that for years they've been trying to educate people on certain topics, and they've spent a lot of time doing it, apparently, to the point where they think it's actually having a harmful effect on their job. They get very caught up in arguing. And I think they've had some friends tell them that they need to cut it down a little bit, and they're here to see if that's true or not, I guess. So, and it's worth pointing out that apparently they did award some deltas in this post, so perhaps it was a successful view change.
Yeah, and I just looking at the TLDR here, the author does a nice job of summarizing, saying, am I wasting, and something I think we can all empathize with on Reddit to some degree, especially when we first came on, was, am I wasting my time trying to argue with every bigot I meet online? And I think that does become a bit of a universal question. A lot of times, maybe for Redditors who are maybe in their first year or something to that effect. But looking at the top comment here, bot, of course, we have a response from Preacher Judge. So in response to the poster, Preacher Judge replied, arguing with bigots who are acting in good faith isn't a waste of time. They might learn something and observers might learn something. But many, many bigots are not acting in good faith. They're only interested in gotchas. You're the real bigot. And their actual arguments are impossible to pin down because they change moment to moment. The important thing here is to learn how to tell the difference. So right off, user Suleiman F, just an attempt to pronounce, is starting with "you're right," but and now as a moderator, how do you feel about this? Because he opens with saying "you're right," but I don't see a delta here.
Well, I guess sometimes you can start by saying that someone's right, but it's not necessarily relevant to the view that's being changed. But I haven't read the comment yet, but we'll see if that should have been a delta or not, I guess.
I'll read it out loud if that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is OP responding to Preacher Judge. You're right. There's a definite difference that is vital to know. The problem is how to deal with each. For those acting in good faith, I will usually have a back and forth with them. And I think the conversation hopefully evolves to where they concede some of my points and take back some of their worst generalizing statements. But for those who are not acting in good faith, I don't know quite how to react. I may reply with data to debunk their point just so they don't have the floor uncontested. But they will usually attack it and then attack me personally for it. Should I just leave the conversation? I don't want them to win or for it to appear that their weak evidence defeated mine. Maybe I'm not blocking as many people as I should. I'd like to throw something in here as Mihat's talking now, sort of interesting in seeing that what would first come to mind. Now, I didn't participate in this thread, but just had I been there, my first thought, and tell me what you think about this, is that it's almost as if in real life or online, it's like there's an invisible third party there. I guess I'm going to think more about the in-person discussions, let's say, than the ones online. But he said this problem from his work as well. But if these are mostly one-on-one discussions, there's something in that seems to be worried about some third party calling wins and losses where, if it's just the two of you, you might get a lot further with something more along the lines of just, listening to understand or asking, non-confrontational but important questions about their point rather than to just come at it hard,
Yeah. Winning and losing is obviously a very, well, it's not an ideal way of putting it anyway. In fact, it goes against the very nature of the subreddit, winning and losing, when it comes to discussing your opinions. Though there are definitely people out there who treat it as a competition. There's no denying that. I think it's part of the reason why discussions can get so heated these days is because they do see it as a side to be on, and a team to fight for, I guess. Yeah. But I think reading that, perhaps that should have been a delta. I mean, maybe they're saying that they already knew that, though. But I think that it is a very important point, the acting in good faith. I mean, it's our rule B, isn't it? That changed my view.
And just for those listening, you must personally hold the view and be open and changing it. That's our rule B. So there is an interesting remark that's a little different here. This is coming back with Preacher Judge's reply. And I think that's the end of that little thread. But he says, I don't think there is any way to talk productively with the people acting in bad faith. This is because the rapid-fire bad arguments, which they'll abandon immediately and replace with another if things start going badly, are actually attempts to reframe the conversation. Yeah, okay, you care about Islamophobia, but why don't you care about Christians in Muslim countries? If you address that and try to argue about differences in systematic oppression against Muslims and Christians in different countries, you're tacitly accepting their assumption someone's attitude about Islamophobia in Western countries and their attitude about Christians in Muslim countries have anything the hell to do with one another. They're actively hurt the overall discussion now because observers are going to be more likely to think that way too. The way I said that paragraph's a little weird because the first sentence was in quotations. I'll just say it again for better context. He's quoting some hypothetical person saying, yeah, okay, you care about Islamophobia, but why don't you care about Christians in Muslim countries? And then he goes into that. So that's a little clarified.
Yeah. Scrolling down. So there's a point here which I've seen raised before in these discussions, and it's from another user that says, they're right insofar as the likelihood of you changing the view of the bigot isn't very high. However, challenging bigotry in public shows people the other side of the story and gives bystanders food for thought. So yes, if your aim is to change the view of a bigot, you're wasting your time. However, it's never a waste of time to challenge bigotry because your impact is on bystanders and observers, not the bigot themselves. So,
or though in the thread.
Sorry?
I was just trying to keep the thread visually.
Yeah. So apologies if I've thrown you off there, but I guess I was ahead of you.
Oh, no. I was just trying to sort of have it here. So these are, for those listening, this is also experimental in terms of our first unedited live one. So we'll keep getting better at tightening up here, but I'm just trying to...
Yeah, no worries. But since I've started that thread, I might as well continue.
Yeah, I just don't see it.
Oh, right. It's the next top level comment.
Oh, it's okay. Second top level comment. I must have skipped past. Okay, here we go. First one. They're right insofar as the likelihood of changing your view. Okay.
Yeah. Apologies.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I guess this comment's interesting because I can see what they're saying, but having I guess, moderating a subreddit which fundamentally disagrees with the idea that it's a waste of time to try and change the view of a bigot, then this is problematic. But I get what they're saying, that it's not necessarily just about you and the person you're talking to. It's about whoever's watching, or which is true on Change My View. You never know who's reading the comments.
Yeah.
But it's not so true in a private conversation, I think, like you mentioned earlier. But then again, it gets into this tricky territory where, okay, you're challenging somebody in the effort to show those watching or reading, or essentially calling them out publicly. You're assuming that everybody else reading is on the fence, I guess, and that might not be true. So, you might be actually being read by people who agree with the person you're talking to, or you could be being read by people who agree with you entirely, in which case, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
So to kind of aim for people on the fence is an odd one, especially today, seeing as everything seems so divided. I'm not sure how many people are on the fence on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is that I don't agree it is a waste of time to try and change the view of a bigot, because in their opinion, that person is a bigot. But I'm sure there's many people who agree with that person. And, ultimately we should be trying to come together on things. So
right.
I don't agree it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Also, I guess this kind of conflates like what it is to be a bigot versus what it is to be closed-minded. Like the previous top-level comment mentioned that a bigot acting in good faith is not a waste of time, because if by bigot you mean a controversial view or a backwards view.
Well, and I also think the core, I mean, bigots evolved as a word now, but I think originally the definition was almost more like saying ignorant, but like in the sense of simply lacking a piece of knowledge. Like, an island of locals that's discovered by sailors, never seen the outside world, you could say are bigoted insofar as their knowledge of astronomy, because they just literally have only been on that island, right? Like, and you've got some advanced civilization coming in. But so it's sort of, I think, drills down a little bit to one of the problems of where bigotry's taken on this more emotional, debatey, relevant, tactile hit, which is sort of like you're wrong and you don't know. And that means that what you're standing on, your firmament, your premises that you're building everything else on is wrong. So it's not just that you're wrong, there's something deeper in you that's wrong, that represents a system with bad premises. And that's like an extra impediment to even the discussion, is that the premises they're working with are bad. It's like two layers of bad at them, I guess, to call someone bigoted, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. I see.
Now I want to look that up, though, to see if I actually have that etymology right, because that's a...
Well, I guess if that is true, if the word bigot is to mean not just backwards in view, but also backwards in kind of approach to everything in discussions and your ability to have an open mind, then I guess this is a closed case. But right. I kind of personally, I take the word bigot to mean someone who generally thinks backwardly, and I think it's not necessarily the case that they can't be reasoned with every time. So, but again, that's kind of what was pointed out above, the good faith versus bad faith thing, which is crucial.
Well, I think part of that is that, like, if you were to look at the abortion debate, you have one side saying, well, they're trying to control a woman's health or medical decisions. And then the other side saying, like, the woman's trying to kill a person. you know, but neither of those fully appreciates where the other side's coming from, you know. It's almost less of a straw man and more of like an incompatibility of the operating systems they have, or just both have different underlying premises. But yeah,
it is such an interesting one, that because, you know, you can have your opinion. In some ways, I find that particular topic to be one that's relatively easy to understand why the opposing side thinks differently to you. If you simply cut it down to religion, which is my understanding of basically the difference, whether you think that life is sacred, is a gift, etc., or not. And I guess that in my mind, I've simplified it down to people who think that and people who don't think that, and it seems like that is one of those cases, and where it's almost impossible to ever come to any agreement because there's such a fundamental difference.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes, you know, the only way to really get anywhere on some of these is to deal with the premises instead of the argument itself. Like, you know, if you can, you know, I can't chop down a whole forest, but I can hit one tree a day, you know, and you know, if you can pull out a table leg or a premise, you know, that seems innocuous at first, that doesn't seem to necessarily affect the conclusion until suddenly, you know, slowly you're like, oh wait, you're not standing on anything.
Yeah,
that's just a long process. But I think it kind of goes back to what some of the most effective delta earners have learned, is that they've got to be really good at making sure you're not going to change anyone's mind unless you totally get their opinion first. Like, you definitely won't get anywhere with you until you actually appreciate that view. Even to be able to step in its shoes and have it almost like a simulation of holding that view, you know, and do it appropriately. Otherwise, you're just, within 2 sentences, you're going to say something they don't grant as a premise, and it's lost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think where in that particular example you brought up, why it becomes so, I guess, heated is because on one side someone thinks that the life is sacred, on the other side they think it's the choice argument, and in their perspective the other person is taking away their ability to choose what they're doing. And then the other person is seeing it as them taking away a life, and it's like, do you represent each other properly or not on that point? Like you just said, I mean, you could say to somebody, you're taking away my freedom, or you could say to them, I understand that you think I'm taking away a life. And the difficulty is there's nothing you can do with that. I do think that this is one of those rare cases where there's not much you can do with that.
Well,
recognition.
Okay. Well,
so we're getting off topic here, I guess.
No. I mean, I think I can address your query a little bit, in that I'm someone who changed his opinion on this fairly late in life, in my late 20s, went from being pro-life to pro-choice, essentially, insofar as the law is concerned, and, you know, the secular part of all that. And I had gone through most of my 20s, you know, making a purely secular, you know, from a United States point of view, respecting that boundary of church and state argument in defense of the pro-life position, and just slowly ended up moving, because I could see the premises moving under me as it happened. I was like, oh boy, you know, like, where are we going with this now? Because it started when I tried to simulate the argument that the other side might make. So, like, I think I was watching the news with my grandparents, and they had commented I was probably 21 or something, about, you know, they're pro-life and they didn't like something a pro-choicer had said, and I was trying to, I guess instinctively before I'd gotten deeper into all this now, but present what they might be coming from. And I you know, at the time I was a Catholic, and with the idea in the room that we were all believing in souls and all that together, you know, I was like, well, I wonder, you know, maybe they're thinking, hey, if there's no brain yet, there's no place for the soul to live. So, you know, you chop off a finger, it's not losing a part of you. If there's no brain yet to lose, it's, and I just you know, but accidentally making that argument, even though I was still pro-lifer at the time, just to simulate it, like opened the door just a crack. And then a year later, I was working as an intern in a film development office, and they were, they also had a nonprofit arm. And I was asked to send a fax out in support of a stem cell research thing and a pro-choice thing, because no one in the office thought twice about everyone not being pro-choice. It was a, you know, very liberal Hollywood. 99% of anyone working in that environment would likely be. And I'm sitting there at the fax machine having a moral crisis. And it, you know, it's going back to like Robert McKee, who talks about storytelling and character reveal. It's in that moment, you know, do I want to keep doing my best as an intern and not cause any shakes in the boat? And it actually forced me to really challenge the view. Like, am I really thinking that stem cells are really abortion? And in that crunch time, I did send the fax, you know, in support of the stem cell research. Because I was like, I guess there really is no brain there. I can't really be a person if there's no brain, you know? And then, you know, I slowly drifted into atheism sort of in parallel to this, but I was still, you know, in the eyes of an atheist position, still pro-lifer until really coming around to hearing an argument of like, okay, let's say you got a disease and the only way you could be cured is to like physically be stitched into an 800-pound person's body. Could the government force you to be made to sustain off of that person? And I'm like, well, no. And I'm like, shoot, well, that kind of, I mean, this is a very abbreviated version of a much longer well of thought on this, but that's sort of how I moved, is because it took like about 3 or 4 or 5 years through those steps. Those are those 3 key linchpins though that came out for me, and I ended up, you know, falling onto the pro-choice side. So, but anyway, sorry, maybe that was a super tangent on tangent, but that's.
No, that is very interesting. I guess it literally, you know, is an example against what I just said on that. It seems to be one of the trickier ones, although it doesn't take away from the trickiness of what you just described, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's the one thing I think for sure on that argument is that it ain't easy on either side. Like, there's no obvious answer, and I think this, you know, the sooner both sides could appreciate that. You know, this isn't about flat Earth. You know, this is
yeah.
Genuine, decent people can disagree on this, and like you can be a pro-lifer and not be all about controlling women's sexuality. You can like literally the problem can just be like I think, you know, it's about the life.
Yeah.
Essentially, you're weighing a life against rights, and it's a situation you never want to see. But that being the case, you end up leaning towards life over rights, I guess.
Yeah.
One might and still seem reasonable. But
yeah, because I guess it's this interesting thing where, you know, it ties into the whole idea of change my views to try and talk something through with someone else in like a calm, civilized, polite manner, and understand where they come from, and try and get them to understand where you come from, and all of that. And I guess where that becomes difficult is if the other person is in some way having a serious effect on your life, and then the human emotion and passion comes into it, and naturally that leads to more of a heated conversation, because I guess you can sit there all day long with someone and understand why they think something differently to you, but if that view is causing you to, you know, forcefully give birth, then I guess it becomes tricky.
Yeah.
Or if the other person's view is forcing you to have to sit by and watch what you believe is something sacred being destroyed, then it becomes tricky for that person. And you know, it's so much more complicated than, I guess, just sitting and understanding, because there's a real consequence of that topic.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this leads to an underlying kind of meta theme of all, many change my view topics, which is like an implied force of law to enforce. Like there's should, and then there's like should be a law, and so it's you know, you could say, okay, I don't like what this culture is doing in another country to its children, you know, and you could say, okay, well, to tell that culture what to do is oppressing them. But then if within the culture, the children are being, I don't know, somehow, you know, mutilated or abused or something, well, okay, then there's some other people telling someone else what to do. So is it okay to tell someone else what to do to stop someone else from telling the next person what to do?
Yeah.
So it's hard to define those concentric circles of where's the boundary of righteousness, the boundary of that, I guess, that somewhat libertarian, you know, live and let live, but when to intervene.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's because, something clarifying in many different topics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm still a strong believer that a lot more issues would be solved if only we were less aggressive to each other. I mean, like, you only have to watch prime minister's questions in my country to
I wish we had that.
To see the problem. I mean, it's essentially two walls of people shouting at each other, and it's the most childish thing. And I don't mean that from some kind of like pedestal or whatever. And literally, it's literally childish. One person is speaking, and the opposing side is going hey, hey, over the top of them.
Well, it's almost like really humanly honest in a weird way, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like letting your physical body take over to describe your disagreement with that person's point.
Yeah.
But I just don't get how in their, well, I guess maybe their aim isn't to necessarily come to an agreement or a common ground. Their aim is to shout the other side down in that case.
So their aim ultimately, you know, in a sense, re-election, and to represent what their constituents are going to want to have them back, combined with, you know, whatever other motives they would have. Like they may have some personal issues that they're very passionate about, and other things. But a big part of that is, you know, is that in a sense the true and human and fair thing that ought to happen is that they come from all parts of the land representing their place to yell it out, and it's like it's this height of what would be the most like civilized core of, you know, London and the halls of Parliament, and then what is at the core? It's a conversation you might hear around a campfire 20,000 years ago, just writ large. Is it, I don't know, true in that sense, or I don't know?
Yeah. So I guess to tie this back,
go back to this this thread here.
Yeah, I think it came from the idea of like a kind of inability to get through to somebody, and it all depends on whether they are coming with an open mind or not, which is, you know, fundamental to change my view, but also fundamental to any productive conversation that leads anywhere.
Yeah. What, by the time someone comes to change my view, if they're the sort of person we would, you know, want to stay and fall within parameters of what the rules demand, a lot of times I guess maybe they're halfway primed to have that door open a crack, you know? I wonder if, like, what do you think is a significant percentage of them that maybe are pretending a bit to be more open than they really are?
Yeah, well, one of the moderators, Garnteller, had a really good breakdown of this, I think, which I'll get in the wiki
Nice.
just now. And yeah, so basically he said that in his experience, we have 3 types of posters, and I largely agree with this. One is those who are truly open to change, looking to seriously probe their view and develop a more nuanced or completely different understanding. 2, those who have come to soapbox and are looking to just spread their view. 3, those who think they are open-minded, but when confronted will retreat back to their original view. And he says, obviously, the first type belongs in change my view, and the second doesn't, but the third is tricky. And I think that's what you were referring to there. I think some people come in thinking that they're open-minded and perhaps aren't as open-minded as they think. But open-minded is a really weird word anyway, isn't it? Because if you think you're open-minded, in a sense, you are open-minded. Because by thinking you're open-minded, you're saying to yourself, yeah, I'm okay with this view changing. But if that doesn't prove true, then it's almost as if in the process you've become closed-minded, which doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that you were open-minded.
Right. Well, then.
But because I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes change my view does act, whether it's its intention or not, it acts as a way of sometimes confirming that person's view. And it's not something we want to really promote or anything.
Well, and it's a delicate thing too, because it's like, I don't know, some mythical metal that you can only forge into a sword once or it'll shatter, and so you have to get it right that first time. Like when presented, I can't remember the name of the author of the study, but basically the idea is that when presented with evidence to contradict a held position, people tend to dig in further.
The backfire effect.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. So thank you. And so if you don't get it right like the first time, then you'll never be able to get in, or it's like the art of getting that view change to happen in a way that's just the right amount of polite but frank, and if you present them that information and do it in a way that doesn't get through, then you've lost them further.
Yeah. And I guess similarly, Gordon Teller follows on by saying that I think it's important to consider that while people in that third group are unlikely to do a 180 on their view, CMV can be like a slow-acting poison. The next time the OP is about to spout off on something, they very well might remember the counter-arguments they heard and pull back on the fervency of their belief. They might notice real-life examples that were pointed out by the commenters. Long-held, important opinions are like a cargo ship, slow to turn around. And I thought that was just brilliantly put. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's going in the wiki.
Oh, that's what you're reading right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And actually, very similarly, one of the comments in that post we were just dealing with said a very similar thing. I'll just try and see if it was exactly the same. I think that is very true. You think something, perhaps, you're going in with an open mind, and then you get like 20 people telling you you're wrong. Perhaps there is some natural human response to that gets you back up. I mean, I'm not making that up. I'm pretty sure it's actually been studied that the same part of our brain that deals with fight or flight is used in discussions.
Friends.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I guess
the simplest of the, I guess Singer put it best with the expanding circle, which is, going back in history, someone wasn't a member of your tribe. They were just other. They were just morally not counted, so this being this age of the internet, and you're there in Scotland, and I'm here in California, and we can have this conversation, but it's a big new challenge for everyone. You know, this collision of planets here, or whatever's happening with everyone's hitting each other all at once now across the world, and we're sorting it out, and it's messy. But change my view is I think a gem diamond that's formed out of those planet collisions, I guess, in a sense. Whatever. Have you found anything else that's like Change My View that's out there? Has some of the same messaging, or?
No, I mean, I'm sure there are similar things. I've just not found them. In terms of the actual structure of Change My View and Change My View's rules and the way the comment system works because of Reddit, I think is fundamental. So in a sense, my answer, I think, is no. I don't think anything like it exists purely because of that structure. And the traffic that Reddit provides, because you need traffic. Like, you need someone with a niche view to happen across your counter argument to that niche view. And it only really happens on a big site like Reddit, I think. I don't think you could set up like a Facebook group and have the same effect as Change My View. I think it's, first of all, the structure of comment trees, the way the comments sprawl out is important. It does happen kind of in Facebook, but it's like just not the same.
It's a great way to organize it. The nearest thing I could think of was I think HUADPE is a moderator over at Neutral Politics. They seem to have their act together as a pretty good forum. It's a place I wish I had more time to actually delve into, because it seems really cool. But Change My View by itself is something I'm kind of catching up to do. But that's the only one I could think of that had that kind of curated, mature. I mean, other than just taking a forum and trusting that the people participating will be good, like some roundtable of Meet the Press or something,
Yeah.
Do you have any shows here in the UK that are well-respected debate or discussion forums?
So what was the first part of?
Sorry, I was wondering if, I was just thinking how Meet the Press is like pretty good. I still get more out of Change My View, but as far as a roundtable discussion, debate type news show, but are there any shows in the UK that are go-to nationally watched debate forums where it's productive conversation?
Yeah, 2 shows, I would say, every Thursday night, Question Time, and then followed by This Week. Yeah, I would say that they're both, they're pretty good. I do have like a few problems with Question Time. I think This Week is very good, although it is totally different. The Question Time, naturally, with it being a crowd of people and a panel, has a totally different atmosphere to anything else. I mean, for on one hand, there's a lot of clapping, which bothers me. I think I've mentioned it before. I don't know. There's something in my brain that just like slightly just feels uncomfortable whenever I hear a group of people clapping towards a point somebody's made. It's like,
oh, that's an interesting. Yeah, it's a little bit brainwashy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very brainwashy, and it's.
I never thought about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's often used to drown out the person they're speaking to as well, which I've noticed. So someone will say something as a counter to someone else, and the audience will clap for like a good 30 seconds sometimes.
Oh, so it's actually used to, like,
I mean, maybe it feels not just that long, but maybe it's not. Sorry?
I'm just wondering, are you saying they deliberately use it like to make them unhearable, or is it more like as emphasis to say I agree, or
I think good faith assumption. I think it is to say I agree. I don't think it is to shut the other person up, but I think it's an unfortunate side effect on these shows. I'm not saying, well, okay. So I guess my point is, if someone makes a good point, the audience clap, but quite often this could happen in the middle of a conversation between two panel members, and it just completely, in my mind, it completely derails the flow of the conversation. So you're listening to them talk to each other or whatever, and then next thing is like a 10-second long clap, and it's just like, in my head, it just doesn't sit right with me. I'm just like, I don't need to hear this clapping right now. I can make up my own mind. Or and you can see in the other person's face, they get flustered because now they're trying to respond through a clap. And they're aware of the fact that they're not the popular one in that scenario.
Yeah, and you have that awkwardness of like, okay, I'm being complimented, but I want to finish my point too. So I'm both like, thank you, the awkwardness of receiving a compliment, and hey, by the way, I'm trying to finish my point here. If you like my point so much, why don't you just shut up and listen to it rather than clapping at me? Right?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I thought that.
Clap in ancient Egypt, did the pharaohs clap, or the Roman Senate after we go?
I'm sure they did.
Like, is this like a primordial thing? Are we going to find other high apes that clap, or is this like?
I think it has its purpose, and well, obviously in entertainment, I think it's good to clap to show your like satisfaction with the entertainment. But I think it's weird when it crosses over into discussion. But then maybe in some cases, even then, it has its use if there's like a huge crowd of people and one speaker. Perhaps it is good for morale, etc. But I think it's unfortunately crossed over into this situation, and I just wish it would stop. But I don't think it will, because how can you stop it? Like, you can't put up a sign that says no clapping, please. I mean, maybe you can, but
well, they have applause signs. I guess you could always add a not applause. But well, do you ever listen to? I think I've heard you mention it before. The IQ squared debates.
Yeah, I've only listened to a couple. The most obvious one being Stephen Fry and Christopher Hitchens on religion.
Like in a cathedral or something.
Yeah. I think that's actually the only one I've watched in its entirety.
With any of them, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't think clapping.
He always says like, "Please don't clap. Whatever you hear,
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Also the other thing about Question Time, because I must say I am a fan of Question Time, so I'm not criticizing it really. But it's not. I wouldn't say it's like changed my view in real life or anything. The questioners are very angry, often rightfully so. A lot of the time it's questions about NHS funding, etc. And then, people are stressed out about all of that stuff. So you can understand why they're angry, but it's this weird kind of like, it's a crowd of people looking down. Well, it's not like a steep or anything, but it's kind of looking down on a panel. Sometimes, firmly stating their questions, and these politicians like flustering to answer them in a way that doesn't, go against their party, and so it can be awkward to watch, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, especially if they're on point about a topic they sort of ought to know about, and then maybe they just, I mean, how many times have any of us just totally forgotten a piece of information that we know so well, but it happens to you at the wrong place at the right time in front of the country, and suddenly
yeah,
you're boned.
Yeah, and the person you're trying to respond to is getting a round of applause.
Yes, doesn't really contribute to the yeah. I had a show I was developing some years ago that someday I'll get back to, but the attempt to address this and other audio issues was to actually separate the people talking to each other by not just space, but by 6 hours. So they'd have 6 hours to come up with a reply, and the other one's just in a separate room. And then you just edit the whole thing together. So it takes like a week to shoot, but it sounds like it's taking a half hour to debate.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I guess that's also in some ways that is tying Change My Views benefits into real life, because the benefit of Change My View is that you can sit down and take some time to write up your response.
Right. Yeah. That is actually that's a good point, because it is so much tougher to do this in person. You know, the one person I've seen do something in person though that is interesting. It's in the same wheelhouse. There's this guy, I forget his name, but he does something called street epistemology. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No.
It's sort of like applying like really good listening and understanding skills while very gently asking slightly challenging questions that are very well formatted. And then like he actually gets people like who he disagrees with to open up on like a lot of things. And it's just people he meets on the street. So rather than like hold a sign and yell, he like gets into these very like nice, calm conversations of, oh, I never thought about it that way. Oh, that's an interesting point, you know, but he has to really get them to that safe zone, you know?
Yeah. It's like starting every comment with, "I see where you're coming from."
Yeah, like that, but like a black belt level of that.
Which sounds like, it sounds a bit fake, but actually it's so effective. And also it's not, it's true as well. It's not like it's a sneaky tactic. It's good to recognize points where you can see where someone's coming from.
Yeah, and I think you have to kind of believe you are not pulling a trick off, but that you really are seeking to understand. I think otherwise they'll see right through it. Here we go. Yeah. Anthony Magnabosto. But it's interesting to watch if anyone's curious in other forums that are similar, or just, things in the spirit of a deep changingness in the world. But yeah, it's complicated stuff with these humans.
I just remembered, following on from that other point about clapping, we actually have like a very similar thing on Reddit, and that is point scores on comments.
Oh,
in a sense, that is clapping, isn't it? It's people clapping for your comment.
That's a great point. Yeah, clapping is like the original form of upvoting. Like, if you're Cicero in the Senate, like, okay, I can tell I'm doing good. It's clapping or it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we decided to hide point scores for 24 hours. So you have a completely honest representation of what people think of each comment, because they're voting on it without knowing how well it's done.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually vital to the success of Change My View, because you're going in and you're having to read the comments and read the points they're making. You can't just jump on the bandwagon of whether a comment is popular or not. You've got to read it. And I think it's vital. And actually Reddit only introduced that feature not even that long ago. Well, a couple of years, I think, but like Change My View existed for a while without it. Yeah, because I think that, downvoting is such an interesting thing, because we've got the saying on the footnote of our posts, downvotes don't change views.
Right.
And yeah, is this really interesting kind of like, this compulsion to press that down arrow on something you disagree with, which is so counterintuitive to Change My View, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost just that immediate, like you'd want to that bad,
Yeah, and it's almost this like, it's almost like admitting defeat. Like you can't write a cohesive argument against it, so you're just going to press that downvote button.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's not fair, because maybe people do both.
Well, I think as usual, it's probably a mix. I did have one thing. We're coming up on 54 minutes now. I thought might be fun on a lighter note. If you wanted to maybe make it an hour here. I just, unless I interrupted any other points you were getting to, I don't want to stop you there if you were.
No, this is just off the cuff, isn't it?
Cool. So I just went to do a search, and I thought, okay, what can we do to find like a lighthearted CMB topic, which are often some of my favorite. And so I just typed the word candy in, right? So obviously some of these are nonetheless still finding a way to get serious about candy. But I saw one that was kind of interesting. This was the topic. It says, change my view. I should get more cheaper candy than fewer expensive candy. And I just love that kind of change my view, because it's like, I'm not sure which is right here. Like, I got to think about this. This is an area I'm on the fence about. But just for fun, I thought I would highlight this, just because I thought, Google something that seems totally innocuous and just see, like, I mean, I'm searching within Change My View for an innocuous topic, but I'm going to do a screen share here and just look at like how well organized the thoughts are of this OP. This OP has been thinking about this for a while. Let me just get this screen share thing to come back up again. Here we go. And just for kicks, I'll read it aloud because it's not too long. Okay, so change my view. I should get more cheaper candy than fewer more expensive candy. Our budget for Halloween, this is 2 years ago. Our budget for Halloween is to spend less than $20 on candy, because I have a tendency to go overboard. But the point still stands. I can also get bulk lollipops and other cheap candy for much less than chocolates and other fancier candies like Dots and Skittles. If I mix the chocolates and the lollipops, the kids get picky and get pissed if I don't give them the chocolates or choice candy. If I let them pick out their own candy, they take handfuls. I have a philosophy that more kids getting candy is better than fewer kids getting better candy. The reason is, there are implications to all of these. The reason is that there are always a number of kids whose parents work late and can't go trick-or-treating until later that night, and they often have little candy in their bag. If there's more candy, I can snack for longer when I'm giving the candy out. Also, I have neighbors that give out chocolates and large lollipops to the kids they know, but I feel that is unfair to the kids that come from the bad neighborhoods. I'm not the type to give out raisins or cheap health food. TLDR, my attempt at a Halloween-based change my view. I should buy more cheap candy. Give me an alternative solution. Now that just makes me smile.
Yeah, this is really great, because I think quite a lot of the time we might forget that Change My View isn't just about really serious political topics. You can post anything, and I think people don't realize that, and we want that a bit more, because it lightens the mood, and you can get some really good discussions out of even the most seemingly kind of funny ideas.
Yeah, because I mean, you can even see the underlying. I just had one of the other mods ask for the link, but you can see underlying the thing. He said, "Well, I'd rather have everyone get a cheaper candy than only a few get a better candy." And like immediately you start thinking about, oh, okay, so this is saying something about like the economy and the decline of the middle class and the haves and the have-nots, and like you can, depending on where you're coming from, you can totally have it go either way on a screed of like some larger geopolitical communism, capitalism.
Yeah.
I mean, is this secretly Bernie Sanders here writing this post? But anyways, I thought that might be a fun way to perhaps tie it up, and maybe we can make a habit of doing one of these each time. Like,
that's good. Yeah, encourage the lighter mood. Yeah, I agree. Also, if anyone's actually listening, let us know any thoughts you have about taking this forward, what you'd like to hear, what you wouldn't like to hear. Feedback would be really great.
Yeah, and Grant, if you just came in, sorry I didn't send you the link till now, but didn't see it. Yeah, well, do you want to wrap it out then, Kal?
Yeah. Well, hopefully this is a recurring thing. I would really love it to be, and it will definitely improve over time if it is one. So, what do you think?
Yeah,
Shall we do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep at it, and we'll just keep experimenting, keep going, and hopefully next time it'll not take 4 or 5 attempts to get it correct. So, one note to self is I'll just make a habit of doing it from work. Much faster internet here at the studios. So, yeah, cool. All right, well, great, man. Thanks for your patience on tying me into all this. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for coming along.
Right on. And I'm gonna have to go watch some Question Time now just to catch up.
Great show.
All right, cool. Cheers, man.
All right, bye.